Hi, I'm Lloyd Bridges, but some of you probably know me better as Mike Nelson, the skin diver in the television series Sea Hunt. I'm going to try to answer some of the many letters I receive from people who want to know how to get started in skin diving. First, I'd like to say that telling someone how to skin dive is like telling someone how to drive an automobile. Nothing can replace personal experience and practice under the supervision of a competent instructor. And taking breathing equipment underwater without instruction is every bit as foolish as taking an automobile into heavy traffic without first learning to drive. Like driving, skin diving is perfectly safe as long as you know the rules, are familiar with your equipment, and don't take chances. But there's a lot to learn, and before this record is finished, you'll see why the minimum course of instruction is 20 hours. 10 hours instruction on diving principles, and 10 hours practice in the swimming pool. Now, let's talk about how to get started and what you have to learn. You should know that skin diving means any underwater activity in which the swimmer has no connecting link to the surface. He's completely on his own. Also, there are two major categories of skin diving. One is diving without breathing equipment, in which the diver holds his breath while he's underwater. This is snorkel diving. The other is called scuba diving, or lung diving. The word scuba is taken from the first letters of the words self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. A scuba diver is self-contained because he carries his air supply with him underwater. Strangely enough, it's much safer to start diving by holding your breath while using a snorkel than using scuba. Not only because your natural instincts and physical limitations will keep you within safe limits, but because breathing ordinary air under pressure does some strange things to our bodies which must be completely understood before diving with scuba can be safe. By the way, those of you who don't know, a snorkel is simply a short, J-shaped tube with a mouthpiece which permits the diver to rest and breathe while he's floating on the surface with his face in the water. For either snorkel diving or scuba diving, you must be in good physical condition. And, of course, you must know how to swim. So before rushing out and buying a lot of diving gear, or signing up for an instruction course, be sure to have a doctor check you over first. If you have any type of heart trouble, lung trouble, sinusitis, bronchial difficulty, or ear trouble, you cannot be a skin diver. The reason is simple. Air is forced into and out of a diver's body cavities, similar to inflating and deflating a balloon. An obstruction which prevents the free flow of air to all parts of your body will cause serious injury if you try to dive. Now, as to your swimming ability. Some people have actually tried to go skin diving before they learned to swim. The results were disastrous. You should be able to pass the following test without using flippers or other aids. Swim 300 yards, any method. Tread water, feet only, 30 seconds. Tow an inert swimmer, 40 yards. Float 15 minutes without aids. And swim underwater, 15 yards. All right, now, if you're in good physical shape and you've passed the swimming test, you're now ready to start learning to dive with a snorkel. Leave the scuba gear alone until you've mastered snorkel diving. You'll be amazed at all the things that you can do underwater without a tank, without breathing apparatus. Throughout the world, snorkel divers are hunting fish, taking lobsters and shellfish, exploring beautiful seascapes, collecting rare seashells and semi-precious stones, and taking underwater photographs. Experts, such as national spearfishing champion Jim Christensen, can hold their breath 3 minutes and dive to 100 feet. But the average time of submersion for a snorkel diver is 20 seconds at a depth of 15 to 20 feet. Most of the beauty and game is found in shallow water within easy reach of a snorkel diver. All it takes is a little practice and experience. The first step, of course, in snorkel diving is to select your equipment. You need a mask, which gives a comfortable, airtight fit. Check it by holding it lightly against your face. Don't use the strap. And inhale gently through your nose. The mask should instantly form a vacuum and stick to your face. If any air enters, it doesn't fit. A tight mask will give you a headache. A loose mask will fill with water. So make sure that yours fits. If it leaks, you won't be able to see anything. To prevent a mask from fogging underwater, rinse it with water, rub both sides of the glass with saliva, and then rinse it again. The best snorkel is a short, flexible tube open at one end and with a mouthpiece on the other. No shutoff is needed. You can dive with an open snorkel in your mouth, no water will enter. Flippers should not only be comfortable, they should be of a size you can handle easily. Flippers too large will tie your legs and cause cramps. You might also lose them. Flippers too tight cause cramps. If they're too loose, they chafe. You also need a float to serve as a rest platform and to hold a sack in which to put your catch. Gloves will protect your hands from cuts on sharp rocks. A knife is carried for cutting lines, seaweed, and so forth. And a diver's flag will warn boat operators when a skin diver is working in the area. Without the flag, you may surface underneath a moving boat. Its propeller could part your hair, but permanently. When a skin diver gets too cold, he can't relax. His reflexes are slower and his judgment's impaired. Unless your diving is confined to warm water or you're satisfied with short excursions on sunny days, you'll want a rubber suit. A wetsuit makes swimming in cold water as comfortable as a warm bath. It permits diving in all kinds of weather at any time of year and for as long as you care to stay. A wetsuit should fit snugly over all parts of your body with no opening through which water can circulate. This usually means a tailor-made suit, but try on a ready-made one first. It's cheaper, and it may fit okay. A wetsuit has dry air trapped in the material and is too buoyant to permit diving unless weights are worn. The amount of weight varies with each individual and can be learned only through trial. When properly weighted, you'll have a neutral buoyancy at a depth of around 10 feet. It's extremely important that your weight belt be equipped with a quick-release buckle which can be operated with one hand. In case of serious trouble, you should be able to drop your weights instantly. The last, but probably the most important item on your list is a diving buddy. Never dive alone. Don't let the fact that I often dive alone on my television series fool you. I have to get into some kind of trouble or there'd be no story. And how could scriptwriters get me into so much trouble if I were never alone? You are not trying to get into trouble, so take a buddy. Now let's assume now that you've purchased the proper snorkel diving equipment. The next step is learning to use it properly. Take your equipment to a swimming pool or a lake or a pond where the water is clear and quiet. Practice with it until wearing diving gear is almost as natural as wearing a pair of shoes. Learn to take your mask off and put it on while treading water. Then learn to clear it of water while you're submerged. The easiest way is to look up at the surface, exhale through your nose, and tip the bottom of the mask away from your face, then let it seal again. Don't quit exhaling until the mask is sealed, or it'll fill with water again. Practice breathing and diving with a snorkel until it's automatic. Dive with a snorkel in your mouth, then surface and blow the water out without raising your head. With practice, you can tell the moment the tip of the snorkel breaks the surface. Now remove your mask and try swimming with your face in the water and breathing through the snorkel. It can be done as long as you're facing the bottom. This trick will prove invaluable if you're using scuba in deep water and should lose or break your mask. Don't worry if your ears hurt when you're beginning to dive. This is not unusual, and the trouble will disappear as you continue to practice. Ear pain is caused by a blockage of the tiny tube leading from your throat to a space in back of your eardrum. If no air can reach this space, water pressure pushes against your eardrum and causes pain. Try opening the eustachian tube by holding your mask tightly against your face and blowing through your nose, or try swallowing and blowing alternately. If this doesn't work, try holding your nose and blowing against the pressure. You can usually tell when your ears clear because they'll pop as the air enters. If none of these work, quit diving until you see a doctor. Never continue deeper after you feel pains in your ears or any part of your body. Even if you don't rupture an eardrum, you'll make your ears so sensitive they'll hurt in every dive. Pressures must be equalized as you descend. With continued practice, your eustachian tube will be trained to open almost as soon as you submerge. Never use earplugs. They prevent pressure equalization and can cause ruptured eardrums. Sinus cavities above your nose also give a lot of trouble, especially during or after a head cold. So never try to dive while you have a cold. Even if you can temporarily clear your ears and sinus enough to permit diving, the pressure will drive germs into the middle ear and sinus and may cause serious infection. There are a few tricks to holding your breath which will help you stay under longer. One is called hyperventilation. This big word simply means breathing in and out rapidly and forcefully to clear dead air out of your lungs. With fresh air and oxygen in your bloodstream and lungs, you don't feel a need to take a breath as quickly. But don't overdo it. Carbon dioxide in your bloodstream triggers the desire to breathe. If the level of carbon dioxide is lowered too far, you can black out before you know you need air. A few divers have drowned because of this, so don't overdo the hyperventilating bit. And always keep a slight reserve of air time in case of trouble on the way up. When you've practiced with your snorkel diving gear until you know how to handle it easily, you're ready to try snorkel diving in the ocean, lake, or river. With some type of spear gun or hand spear, you can hunt fish underwater. Or in the ocean, you can hunt lobsters and shellfish. You can even collect rare seashells and semi-precious stones when you've learned to recognize them and know how to prowl the bottom. Or you may just be satisfied with the fun and excitement of drinking in the beauty of submarine gardens and prowling the bottom of submerged caves and crevices. Whatever you undertake, learning to snorkel dive will teach you what you can accomplish without air. Then when you take up scuba, you're far less apt to panic if something goes wrong. There are two major types of scuba. One is called closed circuit because oxygen is rebreathed over and over again by the diver. The other is called open circuit because each breath is exhaled into the water. Closed circuit units utilize pure oxygen, not air. Pure oxygen is poisonous to the human system when breathed under twice atmospheric pressure. This is equal to a depth of only 33 feet. Oxygen also may cause a sudden blackout in very shallow water. For these reasons, the closed circuit units are not suitable for skin diving and are never used by sport divers. Open circuit units utilize ordinary air compressed to approximately 2,000 pounds pressure. The air is carried in steel cylinders of various sizes and shapes, including double and triple tank units. The capacity of your cylinder determines the time that you'll have underwater, and the capacity is measured in cubic feet of air. The average skin diver uses air at approximately 1 cubic foot per minute while he's on the surface, and all the measurements of cylinder time are based on this figure. For example, the standard single cylinder contains 70 cubic feet of air when full, and it'll last approximately 1 hour near the surface. But determining diving time is not that simple, as you'll see in the section on diving science. The depth of a dive and the pressure in the tank both help determine how long the air will last. Your cylinder valve should have a positive air reserve which will warn you when your air is almost gone. High-pressure air from the cylinder is automatically reduced to breathing pressure by a regulator. All scuba regulators are designed to provide air at breathing pressure in any depth of water. They automatically balance the air you breathe to equal exactly that of the surrounding water. If they didn't, you would either get a blast of too much air, which could rupture tissue, or breathing would be so difficult you'd be constantly starved for air. Selecting a diving regulator is similar to selecting a camera. Each has refinements of operation which appeal to different divers. It's best for a beginner to rent several different types before deciding which one he wants to buy. With scuba diving, you'll need a pressure-proof watch to keep track of the time you're underwater, and you'll need a depth gauge to measure your depth. Both are extremely important for safe diving, so be sure the ones you select are accurate and can be read in dim light. A compass is useful but not absolutely necessary. Underwater, you can't tell which direction you're traveling without a compass. If the work you're doing requires accurate direction, then you'll need one. An inflatable belt, vest, or pack should be carried with you underwater. They're usually inflated by rupturing a cartridge of compressed air and have a multitude of uses. Some of the most common uses are as a marker buoy, as an emergency float, floating heavy objects to the surface, and on the end of a harpoon line when hunting big fish. Other accessories are available but are designed for specialized jobs by experienced divers, and we're talking about fundamentals. Leave the waterproof lights, portable submarines, gold mining equipment, and metal detectors until you're ready for a more serious kind of diving. The care of any diving gear is very important, but with your scuba, it's vital. Your life depends upon its proper operation. All equipment used in salt water must be thoroughly flushed with fresh water immediately after use. Also, rubber goods and high-pressure cylinders should not be left exposed to hot sunlight. Before leaving for a dive, check all equipment carefully to make sure it's operating properly and that no straps are broken. Check your lung regulator for leaks, damaged air hoses, and ruptured diaphragms. Scuba tanks and regulators should be overhauled regularly by factory-trained experts. Never postpone your scuba inspection until the last minute. You may be tempted to use damaged gear. Make sure your cylinder has a pressure test date stamped on the outside that's less than 3 years old. Fasten your scuba harness with a quick-release buckle or a slip hitch that can be opened with one hand. Never tie your equipment so it can't be removed quickly. Never carry a cylinder by the regulator. The weight of the tank may damage gaskets and cause a leak or break a fitting. Transport the cylinder in a secure position and with a valve protected. A broken valve can convert the tank into a jet-propelled torpedo. Always wear your weight belt outside your scuba harness so it can be dropped quickly. But before you even consider trying to use a scuba, learn all you can about diving science and the problems of changing pressure. Earlier, I stated that the minimum course of instruction for scuba diving was considered 20 hours. Now let's see some of the reasons why this is so. The fact that a scuba diver can go deeper and stay longer than a snorkel diver can lead him into situations that are hazardous if something goes wrong. If a mask is broken or lost, an air hose ruptured, or the air supply is shut off, a scuba diver must know what to do and what not to do in order to survive. Only confidence gained from constant training and practice can give you the calmness needed when trouble strikes. Such situations are serious, but they're not the cause of most diving accidents. The reason scuba diving is more hazardous than snorkel diving is that a scuba diver is breathing air under constantly changing pressure. Your body is inflated with air pressure exactly equal to that of the surrounding water. The deeper you go, the greater the pressure of the air you are breathing, and the more it's compressed. The air inside your body holds the weight of the water just as air pressure in a tire holds the weight of an automobile. As long as the two are in balance, you feel no discomfort. But the water and air must always be in perfect balance. Otherwise, you get a squeeze from too much water pressure or a rupture of tissue from too much air pressure. Such a squeeze or rupture can cause an injury, and it can be fatal. The seriousness depends upon the organs affected and the action of compressed air inside your body. You don't have to be deep to get into serious trouble with a scuba. The most common of all diving accidents can kill in less than 10 feet of water and must be guarded against even in a swimming pool. The injury is a result of air embolism and is caused by holding your breath during ascent. A simple experiment will illustrate what happens. Take a balloon and a scuba to the bottom of a swimming pool and inflate the balloon to its maximum. Seal the balloon and let it go. It'll probably burst before it reaches the surface. Now, this is what will happen to your lungs if you hold your breath on the way up. The expanding air ruptures delicate lung tissue and enters your bloodstream. If air bubbles lodge in your heart or brain, it's curtains. You usually don't get another chance. So, never hold your breath while using scuba underwater. It doesn't save any air, and it could cause you to hold your breath forever. More scuba divers are killed by air embolism than from any other single cause. Don't forget that. Breathing compressed air presents a great many problems in addition to the danger of embolism. The length of time your air will last also depends upon the depth in which you're working. The deeper you go, the faster your air will be consumed. The critical measurement to remember is 33 feet. Each 33 feet of water is equal to 1 atmosphere of pressure at sea level. So, at 33 feet, you're under 2 atmospheres, or double the surface pressure. At 66 feet, 3 atmospheres, or triple the surface pressure, and so on, each 33 feet. If you double the pressure on a gas, you cut its volume in half. So, at 33 feet, your air will last half its surface time, and at 66 feet, 1/3, and so on. This is one of the reasons you must keep track of the depth and time of your dive, so you can estimate the amount of air left in your tank. Another, more important reason for keeping track of the depth and duration of a dive is the danger from compressed air illness, or the bends. The bends are caused by nitrogen in the air that you breathe and are a result of a combination of both time and pressure. The amount of gas the liquids of your body will absorb is directly proportional to the pressure it's under and the time of absorption. The deeper you go and the longer you stay there, the more nitrogen will be absorbed. There's no need to worry about the bends if your diving is confined to shallow water no deeper than 50 feet. At depths less than 50 feet, your system will not absorb enough nitrogen to cause trouble, and you can work at this depth for hours. But be sure no part of your dive is any deeper than 50 feet. At depths below 50 feet, the duration of the dive determines the danger from the bends. Nitrogen is absorbed slowly by body tissue, and you must be under a great enough pressure long enough for dangerous quantities to be taken into solution. But nitrogen is released from solution even more slowly than it's absorbed, and when it's released too quickly, it forms foamy air bubbles in joints and tissues, causing agonizing pains known as the bends. To prevent the bends, after a deep dive, it's necessary to stop at different depths on the way up and remain there long enough to allow the compressed nitrogen to come out of solution slowly without forming bubbles. The different stops, or stages, of decompression for various depths and durations are given in the standard Navy decompression tables. Every scuba diver must be familiar with these tables if he hopes to dive with any degree of safety. Usually, a standard 70 cubic foot cylinder doesn't give you enough time in deep water to need decompression. But diving time is cumulative over a 24-hour period, and your time on the bottom must be calculated from your total time in the water and the deepest point reached in any dive. New tables are available which give credit for rest periods between dives, but they are complicated and it's safer to stay with the old rule. Other diving illnesses can be caused from breathing air under pressure. One is nitrogen narcosis, or deep water sickness, which gives a diver a drunken feeling and disturbs his judgment. This illness is usually encountered only in deep water and should be of no concern to a novice. It's important to remember that small amounts of any impurities which give no trouble in air on the surface will cause trouble underwater. Tiny amounts of gases such as carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, oil vapors, and smog should never be allowed in your cylinder air. Underwater, your system absorbs more of each of these gases than on the surface, and the effects are magnified. This is why you should use only certified air in your diving tank. No matter how shallow you're diving, some gas will be absorbed into your system. This gas must be allowed to escape slowly as you ascend. A safe speed when coming up is 25 feet per minute. A rule of thumb is never pass your smallest air bubbles during ascent. These are only a few of the major factors affecting scuba divers. There are many more which can be learned by reading some of the books on diving. My own book, Mask and Flippers, published by Chilton Company, is available in most libraries, and it not only gives the safety rules, but it tells how they were learned, the hard way, through bitter experience. But even after you have armed yourself with knowledge, you should not attempt to use scuba until you have been thoroughly checked out by a competent diving instructor in a pool or pond. By checking out with a scuba, I don't mean just swimming with it underwater. In addition to practicing the routine operations until they become automatic, you must learn and practice what to do when things go wrong. Before assembling your scuba, check the pressure in your tank with a gauge. You may be almost out of air. Assemble a regulator on the tank and test it to be sure it's working easily. Put on your scuba and adjust it so the regulator doesn't interfere with raising your head and looking up. Fasten all parts of the harness with a quick release buckle or slip hitch. The slip hitch is made by doubling the harness back through the buckle to form a slip knot. Pulling on the end of the strap should release the harness. Now put on your weight belt. Remember, it must be worn outside the scuba harness so it can be jettisoned if necessary. Always take a snorkel with you when using scuba. It'll allow you to rest on the surface after your tank is out of air. Put on the rest of your gear, then test the mouthpiece before entering the water. If you don't, you might wind up underwater without any air, either because your mouthpiece might be behind your back, or because you neglected to turn on the valve that releases the air from your tank. Learn to enter the water safely. Never dive head first or land on your stomach. The heavy tank could cause injury. Jump in feet first with the mouthpiece in place, held tightly between your lips. And be sure that you hold your mask so it won't be knocked off. After you get used to swimming with a unit, practice clearing a flooded face mask underwater. Submerge with a mask full of water, look up at the surface, and exhale forcefully through your nose. Tip the mask away from your face at its lowest point, then seal it again and quit exhaling. All of the water should be out. Practice removing and replacing the mouthpiece underwater. Then try removing your face mask and breathing from the scuba with your nose exposed to the water. You must look at the bottom as you inhale, or you'll tend to strangle. When you think you're pretty good, have a buddy unexpectedly remove your mask and the mouthpiece while you're under. You must be able to put them back on without surfacing. Remove your scuba underwater and practice swimming and breathing from it while carrying it in your arms. Work out a simple set of signals with your buddy so you can tell each other if you run out of air, if you're in trouble, or if you must surface. The standard signal for attracting attention is banging on your tank. Use a rock or your knife. The signal for running out of air is drawing your finger across your throat as if you were cutting it. The signal for surfacing is simply pointing upward after you have his attention. If you need air in an emergency, draw your finger across your throat, then remove your mouthpiece. Your buddy can share his mouthpiece with you by buddy breathing. Buddy breathing may save your life. Be sure that you learn how to do it, and that your buddy knows too. Practice buddy breathing until two of you can swim the length of the pool underwater, using only one scuba. For a final practice, place your mask, scuba, and weight belt in the center of the pool. Then submerge and put all of the equipment on without surfacing. When you can do this easily, you're ready to try scuba diving in the company of an experienced diver in the ocean or a similar place. Practically all diving areas have the common hazard of boat traffic. If boat traffic is especially heavy, look for another area. The diver's flag is not a license to interfere with boating patterns, and it's not sufficient protection to ensure safe diving. If it's absolutely necessary to dive in a boating area, select a safe spot to surface and keep close track of your diving time to make sure that you can return to it. Safe entrance and exit in a boating area can be made from beneath a pier or dock, near a seawall, or in shallow water. If working from a boat, tie a guide line to your own anchor so you can return to it and surface beneath the boat. Also, when working from a boat, make sure everyone aboard is instructed never to start the motor while divers are in the water, and never try to work from a live boat. Boat propellers are a lethal weapon to surfacing skin divers. A cardinal rule for a skin diver is to always look above when surfacing. Other characteristics common to both fresh and saltwater diving are currents, visibility, and beauty. Currents should be checked before entering the water. This can be done by tossing a floating object overboard or out from shore. The speed of the current can be judged by the speed of the floating object. If the current is too swift to swim against, diving will be dangerous unless precautions are taken. If working from a boat, leave one man aboard to pick up surfacing divers. If working from shore, select a point of exit down current from the point of entry, or stay out of the water. Diving in a strong current is tricky and tiring, and should only be attempted after you have a lot of experience. The best visibility and the most beauty in any diving grounds is found over a rocky or coral bottom. A sand or mud bottom is usually barren of marine life and relatively uninteresting to a skin diver. Select a spot over a shallow reef or a rocky bottom near shore. A common hazard which is often overlooked is the wind. A strong wind can drive an unanchored float faster than a diver can swim. Divers have been drowned from using all of their energy in trying to catch an escaped float, driven by the wind. Diving in the ocean has all of the above hazards, plus the danger from heavy surf and surge. Never underestimate the power of a giant surf. It has enough force to wreck an ocean liner, and a skin diver caught in it is as helpless as if caught in a giant washing machine. When the surf is humping big, stay on shore. Moderate surf can be negotiated from shore if you know what you're doing. Select a protected spot behind a point or in a cove, and if possible, enter off a sandy beach. If no sandy beach is available, select a spot with relatively deep water close to shore. You need deep water so you can swim over submerged reefs. It's the shallow reefs that give you trouble, because the surge and boil of breakers bang you over the sharp rocks. Select your point of entry as you approach the beach. Watch the way the waves are breaking. Look for the boil of hidden submerged rocks, and watch for riptides. A rip will knock the breakers down as it flows out to sea, and it usually contains a section of dirty water in the current. Stay clear of a rip, especially coming into shore. Before going out, tie all loose equipment securely to your float, or put it in your sack. Spear points must be covered and aimed away from shore so a breaker won't drive them back into you or your buddy. Use your snorkel to swim out to the diving grounds. Walk backwards through the surf as far as you can. There's less pressure on your fins that way, and they're not as apt to trip you up. If a breaker hits, hold your mask with one hand and your float with the other until it passes. Keep your eye on the breakers. When you see a lull, lie on your float and kick out past them. When returning to shore after a dive, stay on your float and ride the breakers into shore. Keep your body as shallow as you can so the breakers will drive you over the rocks, not into them. No matter where you're diving or what you're trying to accomplish, learn to move slowly and take it easy. The mark of the novice is always a diver in a hurry. Underwater, everything is in slow motion. Trying to move fast simply burns up more air and energy without accomplishing anything. Drift slowly toward the bottom, looking things over as you descend. On the bottom, learn to pull yourself from place to place with your hands to avoid the exertion of swimming. You can cover a lot more ground, move faster, and create less disturbance, as well as conserving air. And what's more, you'll see more underwater life. Most bottom life is so well camouflaged or hidden that it can only be seen at extremely close range or after it moves. Experts consistently find plenty of game in areas which novices consider barren. The trick is moving slowly and inspecting every hidden crevice, crack, and hole. Remember, when you're underwater, hours pass like minutes, so don't forget to keep track of your time and direction. It's a good practice to start back toward your float or boat when your air is half gone. Then, when you run out of air, you'll be saved a long surface swim. Never kick off from the bottom toward the surface without looking up. You may have drifted under a ledge and could knock yourself out. As I said before, look up when ascending. A boat, kelp, or other obstruction may block your way. Never use all of your air while still on the bottom. When you go on reserve, head for the surface. An accident or getting tangled in the lines could be disastrous if your tank is completely empty. While on the bottom, always keep your eyes in the direction of travel. If caught in a surge or current and swept over the bottom, don't fight it. Either hold to the bottom until it passes or drift with it. Fighting a current only causes exhaustion, uses up more air, and achieves nothing. In the ocean, if you receive a cut or wound and are bleeding, leave the water. Blood attracts sharks. Never stay out after you're cold or tired. You may need your strength coming in. Probably the greatest single underwater attraction for skin divers is hunting fish and shellfish, either with a camera or a spear gun. In either case, it's necessary to learn the habits of the game you're hunting. Skin divers hunt fish ranging from a pound or two all the way to giants weighing 600 or 700 pounds. And the terrain ranges from the underwater jungles and kelp forests of the Southern California coast to the tropical coral of the Caribbean. The weapons and techniques used are determined by the game you're hunting and the type of terrain. Don't use an elephant gun to hunt rabbits, and don't try to take a sea monster with a pop gun. Use the equipment preferred by experienced divers in that particular area. And remember, spearfishing is hunting. A diver is judged by the quality of game he bags, not the quantity. Only a novice tries to kill everything in sight. There's often a great deal more satisfaction in shooting game with a camera than with a spear gun. And the satisfaction is far more lasting. A photograph can be shown years later and can be appreciated by non-skin divers who never enter the water. Stalking fish for a picture requires as much or greater skill than with a spear. If you're after bottom fish or shellfish, you will prowl close to the reef, inspecting every nook and crevice for possible game. Most of your game hides deep in holes and crevices of a reef, and often an apparently barren bottom will turn into a veritable apartment house when the cracks are closely inspected. If you're hunting open water game fish, you must learn to stalk them carefully and quietly, as they depend upon speed and wariness for safety. In the ocean, no matter what you're hunting, there's a certain amount of danger from aggressive sea animals such as sharks, barracuda, moray eels, and so forth. The danger from these is greatly exaggerated, but nevertheless it can't be ignored. In some tropical waters, the action of wounded fish and fresh blood in the water is such an attraction for sharks and barracuda that experienced divers recommend all fish be immediately removed from the water. The chances of being attacked by a shark can be estimated from the fact that with hundreds of thousands of skin divers prowling in the waters of the world almost every day, the number of shark attacks in the last 10 years can be counted on the fingers of both hands. That doesn't mean skin divers don't see a lot of sharks. In some areas, they're seen almost every diving day. But every shark you see will not attack, any more than every dog you see will bite. The trouble is, a diver doesn't know which shark he's watching. And not all sharks are dangerous. Many species have never been known to attack. But unless you're positive of your identification, treat all sharks as enemies. If you see a shark, get out of the water as soon as possible. But don't try to hurry and don't turn your back on it. Keep the shark in sight and move slowly toward shore or your boat. Yelling or diving at a shark will sometimes scare it away, but don't depend upon any system. None of them are sure. The great barracuda of tropical waters have a vicious reputation which is exaggerated even more than that of the shark. Attacks by barracuda are so rare that they are considered unusual in the extreme. Divers swim with barracuda almost every day, but when one is near, beware of fast motions, blood in the water, or wounded fish. The barracuda might accidentally hit you while trying for an easy meal. Another supposedly vicious denizen is the moray eel. These snake-like creatures hide in holes in a reef and are often encountered by bottom-hunting divers. They seldom bother you unless frightened or hurt. But when hurt, a moray is as vicious as any creature in the sea. Treat them with respect, but you don't have to leave the water when you see one. The giant octopus of North Pacific waters is a sissy. Divers catch them barehanded for the sport. But don't try it unless you know what you're doing. Killer whales are potentially as great a danger to divers as giant sharks, but there are no records of their attacking a diver. However, these mammals eat seals and porpoises, which are warm-blooded, just as are humans, so it's wise to leave the water if a killer whale is around. Seals, sea lions, and porpoises are curious and friendly, and not considered dangerous to skin divers. But any animal of their size can turn renegade, so treat them with respect. Actually, more divers are injured by spiny sea urchins, stinging coral, and jellyfish than any of the notorious sea denizens. Wounds from these small creatures are painful and sometimes cause infection. Watch where you place your hands when bottom scrounging. Grabbing a sea urchin or sharp coral spines is not a pleasant experience. When all is said and done, the greatest hazards faced by skin divers are in the problems of pressure changes and the laws governing safety in breathing compressed air. As I said in the section on diving science, there's a great deal to learn in this respect which cannot be included in this record. Remember also that telling someone how to dive is like telling someone how to drive a car. Before it can be safely practiced, you should have instruction from a competent diver. This instruction is available from any of the diving clubs or skin diving shops throughout the country. To locate an instructor or diving club close to your home, write to the Underwater Society of America, Post Office Box 724, Station A, Champaign, Illinois. So long now. Good luck and good diving.